Hey there, you're listening to the EmpowerTech Podcast with Iyari Cevallos. This podcast is where we discuss all things tech and explore the growing ways in how we can leverage technology to lead smart, sustainable, and impactful lives. We have Gabriella on the podcast today. She is a cybersecurity advisor. And one of the reasons I'm quite excited about talking to her today is that she's really passionate about empowering women in cybersecurity and advancing that diversity, not just because of the imbalance of women in cybersecurity roles, but also because she believes that we have a key part to play in the innovation and the work that is being done in this space today. She also has an organisation that I want to hear about that collaborates, mentors and provides development for juniors in cyber. That is the supportive networking community that you can be a part of. So really looking forward to speaking to her. Let's have a chat to her today. Hi, Gabriella. So great to have you today. I'm really excited about talking to you about cyber. Really exciting topic, specifically around careers. So great to have you on the show today.
Oh, and very much thanks for having me. I'm very excited. And who wouldn't be excited to talk about themselves, right?
Definitely. All right. Well, let's get it started. I wanted to start off with a little bit about you, what you do and why you started in this work to get us started.
Thank you. I have an unusual pathway to cybersecurity. I wasn't working in IT before. And I didn't really have like an inclination rather than just a curiosity. And my journey in cybersecurity actually started with adversity. Some years ago, I used to work on cruise ships in the maritime environment. And part of my day-to-day job was hopping from a country to another one. So every day I was working in a different country, a different place. And during that experience, I managed to visit about 95 countries.
Wow.
Which does sound incredible. And only by saying it and looking back, it's quite amazing. But what happened in these countries, besides actually the excitement of traveling and understanding new cultures and also understanding new languages and new ways of thinking. And it was also the exposure to different security environments and also to criminality. And I guess in one of the travels, I was exposed during a payment, I think online. I didn't understand what cyber hygiene meant at that time. And this is just about 10 years ago now. And I wasn't aware of cyber fraud or cyber attacks online. And during a payment, or I don't even know till today exactly how it happened. And I discovered a cyber attack that actually diminished all my life savings. Essentially, they disappeared from my bank account, but I discovered very late because I didn't really have access to much internet.
Yeah, wow. That would have been horrible.
It was shocking at the time. I found out about 4 weeks after actually it happened. They were taking money out of my account every day until the account was drained. And when I went home to my birth country, Romania, after visiting all South America and North America, I wanted to just pay for something with a card that I knew that had a lot of money. And out of the sudden, there was insufficient funds and just had a bit of a shock, went to the police, went to the bank. During this process, I've learned what actually means the impact on such a cyber fraud, like mentally, but also financially, and the broad, the extent of it, that was impacting also my family, my friends, and a lot of insecurities. The good thing about all this, although it was a negative impact, at that time the bank considered I was a culprit, so I had to prove also my innocence because they could not.
What a nightmare!
Yes, they couldn't explain what I was doing every day in a different country because they could see, transactions. And I think at the time I had to actually do a little bit of forensics on my own computer, and I had to go through the history of my card transactions. And that's where I identified actually where the issue was. And I could prove it that I couldn't be in two places simultaneous.
Wow.
I was showing.
So Gabriella, you were doing your own forensics work on what I'm assuming was not a flash laptop at the time.
Yes.
And, doing your own crime scene investigation, online. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I had to contact the money were extracted from an ATM somewhere in Miami while I was somewhere in Falkland Islands, right? So this is where the first transaction started. So then when I've asked the bank, can you not reach out to the bank that was issuing this money to figure out what kind of a transaction was and get to the security camera? So they said that they are not going to do that. So I actually had to go and contact the bank myself. So it was obviously now it's interesting and it's amusing, but at the time it was quite
stressful.
But, like the key element here and something that our viewers and listeners may want to take is that we can make from an element of adversity, we can build a skill and we can build resilience. And from victim, I became a defender. So what I mean by that is I've managed after months and months to get my money back. I've learned a new skill and I started understanding more about the cyber hygiene. And then I started learning more and more, and I got more passionate about computers and technology to the point that when COVID hit, I lost my job and I had to reskill or upskill. So I went back to school. My husband said, because he's been the one who had the idea, how about you get back to school? Because probably you're going to be unemployed for quite some time. And I had only like 3 days to mourn my old job. And then...
Mourning is important.
Yes. No, I was terribly upset. I really loved the job. I was working still in cruise industry. By that time, I was already living and working in Australia. And I was also very good at the job that I was doing, very passionate. And it got me also a lot of adrenaline that most of other jobs would have not offered until I actually got cyber. Then
so you had to choose something to study, and what was that decision-making process like?
Very simple and very amusing. I printed a list from TAFE, Queensland, and I looked at all the courses that they were offering and figured out how I can match my old skills. And I had a hairdresser there, a social worker, and then there was cybersecurity. So hairdresser, like I'm not really good at doing my hair. This is the best appearance you've seen today. So I was like, no way. Then secondly, social worker. It didn't really, I have never worked in, like in that, and it just didn't seem appealing. Plus I'm a very tall person. So I would have imagined, like bending a lot. So, and then it was cybersecurity. And Kevin, my husband, said, what about that? So it's like, yeah, you know what? I actually know some IT and, this thing happened. How about I dive into this? And from a curiosity, it actually became an idea. Then I've applied. I received actually a scholarship because, and I had an interview with the TAFE people at the time. So because I was an Australian citizen, and this is maybe for the international students that they may hear, I wasn't able to receive free school. So the course was $15,000, which obviously for someone like me that lost the job.
Yeah, that's a big sum of money. Yeah.
Yeah. Initially, when they told me how much it's going to cost, it's like, there's no way I can afford this. And I burst into tears on the phone. And then they said, look, we can assess your skills. And then if you're suitable, we can actually provide you a scholarship. So at the end of the interview, they provided a scholarship. And again, it was tears of joy. And I think the caller at the other end, the assessor, I think has never really interacted with someone that I was expressing emotions so visibly, negative and positive. So, it was really a life-changing experience, I think, for the both of us.
Yeah,
for her to understand. And it was actually a woman on the phone, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of barriers, right, in terms of what you needed to do to get to that point. $15,000 is a lot of money for anyone. And, especially when you've gone through losing your job, trying to reassess what can I do, finally picking something that you think's a good fit. In terms of that process that you went through at TAFE, how long was the course? What did you choose in the end?
Course was supposed to be full-time 1 year, but because I was engaged in another course, I've extended it for a year and a half. And it was, it was supposed to be in person. They were only standing up then the courses, online courses, because of the COVID. So they were still learning on how to do that. And included, technical competencies. So the course is certificate for computer forensics and incident response. So networking, there was the technical element, understanding how to do a penetration testing, on also how to monitor networks. But there was also another component which was more on the critical skills or soft skills, how to present, how to pitch a project, how to do risk assessments, a little bit of governance, risk and compliance elements, a little bit of leadership, communication skills as well. So it was interesting. And within the course, there were also international students, but also, locals to Australia and different ages. But there were only 3 women in my group. And there were 4. From the 4 women, 2 dropped. 1 dropped very, very early, I think within the first weeks. And then the other one dropped, after the first semester. And I paired with the other woman that later became my friend, Maria, and started, working together on assessments and exchanging opinions, etc. It was quite interesting. This was probably the first time that actually I understood a little bit better what it means gender diversity specific to this industry. You see, working in the maritime, there were women also not prevalent to the job. So on an average, you see on a cruise ships, 10% workforce women and the rest men. But there is so embedded frameworks for social interactions and how to set this up and make sure that there is diversity, equity, and inclusions, driven by American HR elements. As I was working for an American company, I have never really witnessed, gender bias, or it was just about work and competencies, right? So then stepping into cybersecurity and seeing it early days from school, where some of the teachers, for example, they would have only directed attention and support to the guys because they were technical, meaning they knew coding, they knew already networking. Although Maria knew as well, but we were receiving a lot of attention. And, constantly we had to ask. And then, even the work groups, the way they were formed, they didn't include us, right? And, other elements, some of the students, the language that was not appropriate and the discussions. So that time, and the reason why I mentioned this, that time started these conversations and a bit of awareness that actually what we're experiencing at school, it may be actually in the whole industry that we were stepping in. So we took a bit of a proactive stance, and I guess the first signs of leadership. And I said, okay, let's go and find networks where women are present, and let's find out other professional networks and see actually how it works. We were just students, we were working, so we didn't know exactly what we were getting into. And obviously at this time, also working on those projects together, and again, adversity. So if there is a statement here that from adversity you can build skills, and if you're just brave or have a bit of grit, and you just face it as it is, and instead of complaining, actually find solutions. And this is what I came across and started early days in my student career to volunteer for a non-for-profit women organization that was focused on women in cybersecurity. And, like from discussions, learning also what it means diversity, learning what other women were experiencing. And those were also the early days I was getting in touch with the women in technology and the realization that there is a much broader issue out there, not just with cybersecurity, but STEM in general. So I became ever since a passionate advocate and supporter. Not necessarily focused only on women, but rather diversity in general. You see, I have an accent. I'm born in Eastern Europe. I do say that my accent is my superpower, but sometimes I also feel this imposter syndrome because of the accent. So, like battling internal demons.
It's more obvious, I think. I know, I'm Mexican, but I do sound very Aussie. So it's easy for people to just assume, right, that I'm similar background and similar struggles. So really good to hear about your journey in terms of, getting into the career and also, why you're in sort of championing that diversity in cyber and I guess across STEM in general. In terms of, that career step, so that we give listeners an understanding of what is it that they should expect. What's a typical job, Gabriella, in terms of day in the life of someone in cyber? And I know there's probably a range of roles, but what would you expect based on your own experience and what you've seen now, what people should expect starting out?
Good question. And this was also one of the million questions that I had during my studies at TAFE. We were taught about the defensive and offensive security, but there were elements of governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC, and I didn't really understand the term. I think they had an opportunity to better explain, and I think now the course has changed. But initially, after the course, I thought I'm going to be, like a cybersecurity analyst looking at networks, like on the defensive side of security, basically, like being the gateway, and making sure that on the door and on the windows, only who is authorized to enter would enter. Or you become a pen tester. That was another stream. Or offensive security, where you try every door and every lock in the house until you get in, right? So this is the way to put it in simple words. At the time, I met actually my mentor and now friend. His name is Brad, and he mentioned to me the gold word or the diamond word, GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. So when I actually looked more into it, it was so broad and covered so many elements that actually I could map my skills from a previous industry, and this is where I've determined to go. So essentially, we are looking at the proactive side of cybersecurity, where you implement programs, you look at policies, you look at legislation, you look at, like operating models, you look at strategies on how to deliver the work. And you look at also, team formation, you look at the culture, change management, so much broader, business continuity, business resilience, disaster recovery, and also testing, right, or simulations. So that's like broad per se, and there is so many. So essentially, if we want to call it, like in different streams, so penetration testing, and there is also various options there. And usually this is the hardest domain to actually get in, from what I understand from my peers and, for what I've witnessed also from my colleagues, where it requires extensive working experience. So imagine as a junior, that's quite a challenge because you have experience and when someone gives you a chance, right? Before then, only practice what you learn, like theoretically, like hack the box kind of environment.
Yeah. You need to, I would imagine that you would need to know a lot to be able to do that effectively. So that's kind of the more advanced skill set then from what you can see in the industry at the moment, because obviously these sorts of careers evolve quickly with tech. So in terms of so you could be kind of more on that analyst that you mentioned before when you start off. or in the governance space, which does sound quite broad and interesting. So it's fascinating to hear about that. And then you've got things like the penetration testing kind of skill set further on in the more advanced. Will that be fair?
Yeah, but there is even more broad. So, there's the engineers and the architects. They look at conceptual designs and how actually, the whole technology stacks fits together and, what are the connectivity elements on how those technologies are talking, also from a protective technologies, like firewalls and etc. So there is so many more I dive into it. So I'm 3 years into cyber now, so quite 3.5 years. So plus the over a year that I've actually attended school, so it's 4. But and I'm still unpacking roles that I have never heard before. And one thing that I have noticed, though, and this thing seems to happen when there is, skills and there is not necessarily a job opportunity for that individual, but they receive support and, like leaders, the visionary leaders that understand those skills, jobs are created for those people, right? So for example, my first role was a bit, like the GRC, working on documentation for a few months, like a contractor, because I needed to wrap up my studies and do my last exams. But when I actually got my first advisory role, that role did not really existed in the company, right? So, and they created something together. They put something together for me. I'm not saying that I was highly skilled. Rather, I had a lot of experience from other industries that they were so valuable and transferable to the company where I was hired. So they looked at, okay, this is what she can bring to the business, and this is where we possibly can teach her, right? And I've also noticed, around me and my peers, that they were offered jobs where those roles were created. But these are only singular examples where maybe you would call them, like unicorns,
Yeah, and I mean, I would assume, Gabriella, that this also has to do with where we're at, right, with technology and the advancements of bad actors and the technology that's improving around protections. So that doesn't surprise me to hear that there might be some generic kind of skills, if you like, around cyber in general, but then there might be unique roles, right, depending on the organization, their size, the type of data that they deal with, the type of systems that they typically have. I wouldn't think that you would necessarily have a like-for-like role with completely different types of organizations, but maybe similar titles. And I guess that's where the demystifying is really helpful for people. So you mentioned, for example, architecture. So I know that traditionally there are roles like solution architecture or enterprise architecture, so they might not have cyber in their title, but they're definitely working on potentially cyber projects or cyber initiatives. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So that's really helpful to walk through that. In terms of the barriers that you think people have at the moment in terms of getting into this industry, or, if they are thinking about a different career move, so instead of continuing on the path that they're on and having a career shift, whether that be in their younger years or their older years, this seems to be something that is not uncommon these days to have a career change. What do you think the typical barriers are into cyber?
Yeah, look, my first examples were, like unusual occurrences, like when jobs are created for very talented people, but we can't expect everyone to be talented. Talented also needs to be growth, and it comes out of passion. So these are singular cases, but the whole industry obviously is suffering a major gap. And you may read in the news, in mainstream media, or within the community of practices that actually there is no many roles created for juniors because cybersecurity is so complex and this inherent maybe mentality that you need to be very technical in terms of technical competencies, related to the technology stack to be protected, right? The information or digital assets. But essentially, what what we need to realize that's the first barrier, the mentality. So we need to shift that cultural change mindset really about what cybersecurity really means. And, like I've heard many conversations in some restricted circles where I don't even have access anymore because maybe I'm too blunt about, like the diversity of skills that we need to bring in the industry, where if you haven't been, like in IT for 10 years, you can't actually be even maybe a SOC analyst, or you can't be a security engineer, etc. Yes, you do need technical competencies. They need to match also the critical skills. This is what I call the soft skills. So other barriers are, like there's two sides of it. So one is the technical competencies and the working experience that obviously when you shift careers or you're at the beginning of your professional career, right, for the younger generation, that it's very hard. You go in this continuous circle or loop where, okay, yeah, I need to gain experience, but I'm not given the opportunity, right? So, and this is where actually this community of practices and these circles and these networking events that those community of practices or industry bodies, they offer, it's exactly for this purpose. First of all, to network and identify, like maybe a potential mentor that would actually, like drive you or give you a bit more direction on where do you need to go to focus your learning opportunities, but also groups that actually offer hands-on learning experience, right? Iyari, I've founded a non-for-profit cybersecurity community of practice that's called Cybersecurity Champions of Tomorrow. And essentially, this is what we do there. We are gathering all the juniors or students together with senior practitioners and leaders, and we do hands-on learning experience so that when they actually do their interviews or when they do their first job, they feel a bit more comfortable, about the concepts and actually what really means a risk assessment. What is this document looking like? Like what is expected of me? So
well, that would give them a confidence, but also the ability to ask the right questions when they're at their job place, right? And that being able to do that in the workplace would do a couple of things, I would imagine. And one is provide the organisation or the team leader with some also confidence that they've got the right person in the job because they're asking good questions. And yes, also for that individual, probably give them more opportunities, right? Because if they're asking the right questions and they're seen to be proactive about their own careers or being interested in the subject matter, then they're likely to get, those projects or be selected for things where they can continue to learn and grow and get that experience, because that's how it happens for juniors, right? Or for people that are starting off new. That accelerated growth and opportunity only happens if you're given the right types of work, right, to stretch you.
Absolutely. One of other, you're like really right, hit the nail on the head. And this is what these networking events, like Women in Technology also offers the same platform to actually for individuals to connect and also understand, like there is a broader world out there, but also offers maybe, like inspirational personas or
role models. Yeah.
Role models.
Yes.
Exactly. So you can't be someone that you don't know it exists, right? So having role models in our community, it also helps to determine, like what are your goals, career aspiration, motivation, and then work towards that. And this is, like in terms of barriers, one of the struggles that I had when in my first year in cyber, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So when you don't know what you don't know, you also don't know how to ask questions. And it took me I was talking about my first job. I didn't have a great experience, but again, I always see, like from adversity, opportunities to learn, and I leave, like the negativity in the past. And, like including, negative people that they may have, not realized the negative impact.
Yeah, the impact that they have. Yeah.
With the behaviors to my career journey and, like my self-esteem and my self-confidence, right? I have learned on how to formulate questions to identify the things I don't know. Another element of this I don't know what I don't know is when you actually read these position descriptions, and because the role titles don't necessarily mean what a job means, right? It's actually unpacking those role descriptions. And some of the times I read it myself, and it's like so unrealistic expectations that someone that is at the beginning of their careers, not to mention even a security student, actually has no idea how to read that because they don't understand that actually is unrealistic,
No, they don't. And it is a shopping list, let's be clear.
Yes.
A wish list of things that you want in someone, that is an advertisement. Yes, that is a problem that we all, I think, know about. And I think organisations, I think I've started seeing some of them in their job descriptions have a little bit of a sentence at the bottom to say, if you don't have all the skills but you think you have, the talent and the passion, please contact us, or something along those lines. So I'm starting to see kind of little hints at organisations trying to ensure that they make that clear, but it's still really hard for students and people that aren't in the industry. You're totally right. Some of those job titles, I'm going, what is that about? I have no idea what I'm applying for here, or even how to find them, right? Because most places where you're looking for jobs, you have to, punch in keywords, work out what type of job title you're trying to find. It's a needle in a haystack if you don't even know what the job title should sound and be like.
And you're absolutely right. Then there is another element of the job descriptions and how do you apply for a job. I'm learning with myself, but also with my peers and my friends that work in the industry, that women actually, if they don't actually cover at least 70% or 80% of the job description, the key points, right, they are never going to apply for it, right? So more you make that more complex, less chance you have for a woman to apply for the job. And one of that we should advocate in our communities and encourage women to talk about this, shopping list, and actually have the a bit more to be a bit more courageous on applying for those jobs. Because after all, there's no risk, right? The worst that can happen when you apply for a job that you may not be suitable, just be rejected, which it's a daunting job task to have. And look, I have a little story here. Something that I talk about my husband in my career journey only because he's been my best and almost champion and so supportive. Yeah. So just before I started the cybersecurity journey, I was applying for jobs. I'm fairly new now to Australia, but at the time when I was in the studies, I was like in my fourth year. And I think at some point we're looking for a job. And this is before COVID, right? I applied for 300 job applications, right? Because I was keeping a track on them. And I was so daunted by the fact that I was not even invited for an interview. And keep in mind, my resume, it's not like it doesn't lack experience. And, I have self-awareness of where I'm applying for jobs. And, for some of them I was underqualified, for some overqualified, So.
Yeah, it's still a lot, though, to not get any replies.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've learned how to deal with rejection, and I've learned continuously by saying every rejection is a redirection, but it was still daunting, and all I needed is 1 year until that 1 year came and someone gave me the opportunity. When I started into cyber and, I could say only maybe in my first role, it was really an opportunity. I didn't even have to apply. The job was offered to me. But, on a second job, I already had 3 job offers, so I could choose, right? So I was, 3 months in the workforce. And I already had the opportunity to choose in between.
Wow, okay.
My next job, I had, 5 job offers, and I could choose between. And, and I was daunted, oh, my God, what's happening? It's like a year, 2 years ago, I was struggling to get a job. And now I have this opportunity.
You're batting offers out the way, yeah.
So, but, I tick all my boxes, right? I was going in and networking events, understanding, what's required. I was practicing on my interview skills. I was reading very well the job description, and figure out, actually things about the company. So I really put all my effort into it, right? And then, again, you only need one chance. I do know, though, example, some of my colleagues at TAFE that even now, after all this time, they still haven't landed their first job opportunity. And I'm cautious on saying that maybe because he's different color of skin, a different name from a country that that usually experience a lot of racism, and just simply didn't tick the boxes of the reviewer, and it's so daunting. Like I know people also that have in their first job they did not receive kind feedback. And they were so disheartened about the way they were treated in their first job. They went back to their old jobs, which were totally different. And because someone wasn't kind enough to them and didn't know how to provide constructive feedback, and they were looking just in a judgmental, or they didn't stop to explain a concept that could have been so easily unpacked. And this is something that we need to really work out as an industry, not just in cybersecurity, but STEM in general. Role models, mentors, coaches, make sure, like kindness. Nothing stops you from being a kind heart, because, I do believe in karma. And every time when I help someone, and I say, oh my God, Gabriela, you've been so good to me. How can I repay you? Well, do one thing, pay it forward. If you are in a position to help someone, then pay it forward. And that would be my way of receiving thanks from you. And make sure you don't stop and you don't do half measure, right? Because I haven't stopped and I did give you my full measure.
No, that sounds like really good advice for any leader. Gabriella, I really want to ask more about this program that you mentioned before that you've run. Can you talk us through what someone would expect in terms of engaging in this network that you've got, and why do you think it's important for them to come along? What will they get out of it?
Yeah, so and pinning back to my early days at TAFE, when there was this segregation of groups and learning about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace and in general in the cybersecurity industry. And because we just didn't know what is going to become of us at the end of the course, I thought of inviting someone that actually has working experience. And I mentioned earlier about Brad being a mentor that mentioned for the first time GRC. So when he mentioned the GRC and so on, it's like, and he made like so much sense. He had like this mentor approach. My brain was, total joy, fiesta, right? A Mexican fiesta in my brain. This is the way to put it in a neurospiciness, right? And I've invited him. He's like, would you like to come and talk to my colleagues at TAFE? And he said yes. And I was surprised because I wasn't expecting. So then I went to my teacher and said, would you be okay if we invite a couple of people in the class that they work in cyber and just talk to the class about, like what they do in their jobs and what kind of cyber they do and all that. And they said that the gentleman, Rob, said yes. Like, okay. So I got the first yes and then the second yes. And then I put together a little group. And then I kept asking people, leaders that I met. And they were like obviously visionary leaders that they were really keen to help. And out of the sudden, I had this cyber festival because I had so many people that said yes. I didn't really have anyone that said no. And I had 2 days worth of cyber discussions for many, many hours.
Wow.
And then
okay,
my colleagues were helping me, volunteering to set up the chairs, I did all the planning, I had questions for everyone, and it kind of transformed into like a career workshop on a 2-day extent. And during that time, I said for the first time, when I've introduced my colleagues at TAFE to the mentors that they were coming to talk to us, and I looked at my colleagues and I've introduced them and I said, these are the cybersecurity champions of tomorrow. So it kind of remained that way. And
that's fabulous. I love that.
Really and so that was the first event, right? In the first early days of TAFE. And then I did it again. And then I did it again and again and again a lot of effort. I had a lot of support, people that they were crazy enough at the beginning to believe. And then I've actually, after I finished the school and started as a practitioner, I continue also to volunteer at the same time for this non-for-profit uplifting women and giving them the opportunity to connect, also with training opportunities, etc., and connect with other leaders. Then when I actually gained a little bit of more confidence, I started online workshops to cover broader Australia, not just to do them in person, because I was doing them in person. And, like one thing led to another one. And from 15 minutes sessions, 15 people in the session, just, okay, what we're going to discuss about. I had also support from a gentleman called Ivano, at the University of Queensland, that rang me and said, Gabriela, I think it's a great idea what you're trying to do, and I'm here to support you. I don't know how, but even if bouncing ideas, let's do it. So when I heard that, and Brad, same guy that said yes at the first time, and there were multiple people that they were calling me and said, okay, we want to help, but we just don't know how, but we'll figure out. So when actually we went online and we did the first session, second session, I think a year later, from 15 people, I think I had even 100 people in the session. And I was a little bit overwhelmed because I didn't know how to react to it. It's like, are we doing good? Is that so much need? It was also scary, right? Because you take a big mission ahead of you, right? There's so many people that need your help that there needs to be a forum for it, right? And we were unpacking terms and definitions, and we were discussing cyber. And I started talking about, everyone has a seat at the table. I created this logo, which is a phoenix bird.
Yes, I love your logo, Gabriela, I must say. The phoenix rising. It's wonderful. And so at the moment, in terms of what participants and potentially volunteers, right, can get out of the what you do today, I'm assuming that there's a variety of things, right? So you've got mentoring, you've got demystifying some of what cyber roles are today. Are there other things that people can expect as well?
Absolutely. So every session is different. We never repeat the topic, and it unpacks pretty much anything in cybersecurity. So we have, the lens of the governance, risk, and compliance, because literally is the neck that moves the head, in cybersecurity. But, and at the forefront, it's actually leadership, right? So we discuss about principal leadership. And we have from time to time speakers and mentors that they come and they discuss with us, what actually leadership means, a broader concept, not just referring to cybersecurity. So what they come, the key takeaways is something to unpack and figure out also, the change of mindset on how do you approach career opportunities, on how you learn and how you approach, adversity. Then other things that we unpack also, we do career fairs, resume reviews. Oh, there's nothing really.
Wow, there's a range of things there. It sounds like we're going to have to direct people to your website. So we will include that in the link in the notes. Gabriela, wrapping up on our conversation today, I really want to ask you a question around your top tips for listeners in terms of how they can empower themselves. So if they are starting to think, maybe this could be something that I'm interested in, it certainly sounds like an exciting career move to me. How is it that people can empower themselves, whether it be to make the change or to persevere?
Yeah, good question, and good question to wrap up with. Self-empowerment comes also from self-reflection, right? And we are so self-doubting ourselves so many times. I think first step to make the change is actually just step outside of your comfort zone and, apply for the job if that's what you want to do, or just go to a first networking event and see what is out there. And I promise it's going to change your life perspective totally. Then, determination is very important, you have made a decision, then stick with it. It's not going to be easy. You don't learn when you're in your comfort zone. You learn, I'll pin it back to the first few conversations. I've learned from adversity. And this is essentially how the brain works, right? Then another thing, like believe in yourself. Like if you don't believe in yourself, no one will. And that energy is read throughout the room. Also, for mentors, for friends, for peers that would help you with empowerment and also to work on your self-confidence. And something that guides me every day of my life when I feel like an imposter. Confidence is a decision and fear is a reaction. I constantly say that to myself, including this morning.
I love that mantra. Yes.
Getting in, like it's just simply when the fear of unknown, and it's in everyone, right? Regardless how much you're in a topic or in a career, that is always there. Obviously, like overly confident,
I don't think there's any trouble with that, quite frankly. So confidence is a decision and fear is a reaction. So love that. Love that, Gabriella. Thank you for talking to us today. And we will have some information about some of the things you talked about today on the show notes. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be interviewed by a visionary leader like you are. And I hope to have the opportunity again to support.
Thank you, Gabriella, so much. Speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening today. Do keep in mind that this is a podcast for informational purposes, and all we're really doing is sharing our opinions on things that matter to us. With that being said, if you liked what you heard and want to continue supporting us, share this podcast with your network to help us grow and bring on even more guests. Until next time, this is Iyari from EmpowerTech, signing off.